Welcome to the Wellness Amazon podcast. This is a podcast for highly sensitive people, people that have high intuition and are just in tune with themselves and the outer world. Come and listen to multiple different high spectrum subjects and just peek behind the curtain. But I warn you, once you peek behind the curtain, you can never go back. Have fun. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Wellness Amazon podcast with, again, a very special guest today. Very, very honored, really, to have you on the show, that you take time out of your busy schedule. Brian Friedman, the Brian Friedman. And I'm going to read this off my notes again because it's so much and it's so impressive. So Brian is the founder of Redefined Yoga Online. And his goal is to offer the safest, most effective way for you and anyone to move better, feel stronger, and get your life back. He has over 30 years of yoga and yoga instruction. He is the founder and co-owner of Redefined Yoga. He is inventor and developer of functional yoga instruction and the author of multiple books about pain management and safe movement. He is a hobby musician, if I remember correctly.
Is correct.
Yes, and a fan of Bigfoot. So here we
Also
are.
correct.
All right. I will link everything in the show notes, your Instagram page, your regular website, so people can find you, and your YouTube channel as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of yours. I think we met, it feels like forever ago, but Brian used to have a brick and mortar yoga studio here in this little tiny town in Florida. And really life-changing stuff, really life-changing stuff. So you revolutionized, for me, you revolutionized the idea of yoga.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And thank you for having me on the podcast. It's an honor to be here. And I hope to answer all your questions to the best of my ability and as clearly as possible. So thank you.
Yeah. So as I've told you a little bit, Brian, before, this is the first season of the podcast is all about highly sensitive people, which is sometimes very hard to explain to people what this entails, but it's just usually very quickly overstimulated because you see, you hear, you feel kind of everything all the time. And I wanted you to come on the show because I, in my personal journey, have noticed shifts and changes with not only yoga, with qigong, with tai chi, with breathing, just breathing alone without anything else. And I know you are very familiar, obviously, with all of these things, and that you can maybe guide us a little bit through this so that at the end, some of our HSPs who are listening have a couple of tools to work with through their day-to-day life. So my first question is usually always the same question. What are your touch points with in your own life with HSPs, or maybe being one yourself?
Okay. I'll do my best to explain. Now, I have never been diagnosed as HSP, and I've not been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum as well. So I want to make that clear. These are just based on my experiences, and I'll do my best to answer the question. Now, my wife and I, my beautiful wife and I, Karen, we suspect that I'm more on an autism spectrum than an HSP spectrum, although there are some overlaps. So, for example, for me, just being out in public gets overwhelming really fast. If Karen and I are at a coffee shop, I pick up on the music that's playing, the song that's playing, the artist that's playing, person next to me who's speaking Portuguese, the person at the counter ordering, having problems with their order, the person behind me, and I'm trying to navigate the conversation that I'm having with Karen. So there's that overlap there between HSP and ASD. The thing that kind of gets me off of the HSP spectrum, from what I understand, is that I'm awkward in person, in just normal sort of small talk kinds of ways. I understand that HSP folks, they're a little more personable. You don't pick up on how on what they're going through until you speak with them or interact with them. With me, it's clear this guy's a little weird. It's just because I don't have I lack some of the social skills, and I miss some of the nonverbal and social cues when I'm interacting with people, and that's why I think I tip a little more towards ASD. But the overlaps of the sensory overload and being overwhelmed, the tendency to tip towards anxiety and depression, that's where I can empathize with folks who are on the HSP spectrum. Is there a spectrum with HSP
No.
as well? No. Okay.
It's not even, at least in America, that's not even like anything a doctor would pick up or even discuss with you.
Hmm.
Um, as far as I know, I have never heard about this. However, a coworker in Germany has just told me that her doctor pointed that out at her, and it's an osteopath, so a little bit more the natural way. So I don't know if this is something that maybe is on the brink of there's an evolution to recognize that. But again, honestly, like you said, all of these things, ADHD, autism, HSP, those are all, they can go, so it gets so muddy.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a big Venn diagram and everything overlaps.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand.
Hmm.
And so where you and I are talking about overlap, um, how we can, I have to choose my words correctly, like how we cope with it, how we deal with it. We can HSP and ASD. We can rely on good old science, one of my favorites. And one of the most accessible, you mentioned it earlier, is breathing.
Hmm.
And it's really profound. It's very simple and it's accessible to almost everyone as long as you have a nose and as long as you can breathe in and out through your nose and in and out through your tummy, you can change your state. And you can change your state quicker than taking medicines, pharmaceutical intervention, at least in like taking pills, that can take up to 15 minutes before it makes it into your system. Intravenous uh, intervention might be a little quicker, but just by breathing, you can change your state in 3 minutes.
Hmm.
And it's not conjecture, it's science. And there's plenty written and recorded about it. And the phenomenon that happens is you're literally changing your well, I know I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. You're changing your state. We have two switches. One switch is the sympathetic nervous system.
Hmm.
Sympathetic. This is stress. This is fight or flight. And then we have parasympathetic. But we can control this just through our breathing. So stress, the sympathetic side, this is when we're breathing shallow. You're breathing high up into your chest. You might be mouth breathing. And we need this just as a fight or flight mechanism to get ourselves out of danger. But a lot of folks will remain in this state. They're not even conscious of it, that they're holding their mouth open and breathing high up into their chest. It's called clavicular breathing because of your clavicles here. So this high chest breathing, clavicular breathing, is very shallow and it stimulates the fight or flight. So you can imagine when you start to get upset about something, your chest is heaving, your clavicles going up and down, you're getting upset, you're spiraling out of control. But if we slow that down and we close our mouth, breathe through our nose, bring the breath down below our ribs into our tummy, you literally flip a switch that brings you into what's called parasympathetic. And this is rest and digest. A lot of people, they don't experience rest and digest
Hmm.
because they've just picked up the habit for whatever reason of mouth breathing and high chest breathing. It's something that if you want to, we can take your listeners through a simple exercise they can try for themselves if you want to do that too.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
actually wanted to ask you about
Oh,
it because I realized that we talk about breathing, and actually a couple of episodes now, we never sat down and said, hey, let's do it together right now.
okay. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
try it. If so, for your listeners, please make sure you're someplace safe. Don't do this while you're driving your car because we've got to put one hand kind of high up on our chest. So your collarbone is just below your voice box here. So just one hand kind of on your collarbone. You take your other hand and just put it on your belly button and just keep your shoulders down. And at first, we're not trying to do anything. We just want to breathe. And as you're breathing, observe what moves. Don't correct anything. Don't fix it. Just observe. Does your tummy move? You don't have to answer, but just observe. Does your tummy move? Does your chest move? Does one move before the other? Is one absolutely still? So we're just taking in data. We're not trying to fix anything. Now, what we'll try to do, I should say, now also get an idea of how you feel. So are you focused in this moment right now? Are you worried about the future?
Mhm.
So we have all this data, how you're feeling and how you're breathing. Now let's see if we can flip the switch, if it applies. So here we try to keep the hand on our chest. Try to keep that still and breathe into your tummy. So when you inhale, you want to feel your hand move away. Your tummy will push your hand away. And when you exhale, your tummy will just collapse, for lack of a better reason, and your hand will follow. So as you're breathing in and out through the nose, can you keep your chest still? And can you only move your tummy? Or at the very least, mostly move your tummy. And notice if anything's changing. And the goal is to try to make this as habitual as possible, as often as possible. Just a simple 5-minute practice once a day can make a big difference. And then we can gently come out of that and just notice if you felt a difference by shifting into a parasympathetic state. Did you feel anything, Melina?
Oh, I did. You might have noticed that in the middle of it, I started to close my eyes because I got so calm and I wanted to get deeper into the sensation of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, that's all things being equal, it's a biochemical response, or I don't know if it's biomechanical or biochemical, probably a little bit of both because it has to do with nerve signals and things going up and down what's called your vagus nerve. And if your listeners know exactly what that phenomenon is, please share it in the comments so I can make sure I'm saying the right things. But for all things being equal is you can't, how do I say this? You can't be upset and anxious when you're breathing in and out through your tummy and in and out through your nose.
Mhm.
It's, for most of it, it's just impossible because of the wiring into our brain. Just on the other end of the spectrum, it's hard to be calm and focused when you're breathing up into your chest and mouth breathing. It's hard to get to that point of being grounded and focused and calm, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question for you about that too, because I did breath workshops with you multiple times in person, online. Then I read the book Breath from James Nestor.
Mhm.
Holy cow. Highly recommend everybody read that because he talks about when you don't constantly breathe through your nasal shape actually changes because it needs that airflow to be shaped open to
Mhm.
it's just like nature and rocks and the wind. But every time I do sometimes meditations on certain apps or whatever, so many times I hear breathe into your nose and out of your mouth. Even in like other yoga teachers will do that,
Mhm.
where I'm like, but But that's not how I learned it. Why would we breathe out? And it's not like the one, oh, with a sigh or you making noise. It's just always breathe out through your mouth.
Uh-huh.
Why is that?
That is a great question. And I honestly, I don't know why that is. I know that um, just based on science, you mentioned James Nestor's book, and yeah, all of your listeners, all of your viewers should run out and purchase that book immediately because, in case they don't know, James Nestor is an investigative reporter.
Mhm.
So he has no skin in the game. He's not trying to sell you an app or a course or a, a book on his specific breathing techniques. He's trying to crack the code of um, what the big deal is about breath work. Was it just a bunch of woo woo, or is there any science linked to it?
Mhm.
And he found out there's a lot of science linked to it about the vagus nerve and things that we've already talked about today. So definitely check that book out. Now, I can't answer your question where that came from or why.
Mhm.
I can answer your question in that we need to primarily breathe in and out through our nose until we go beyond our metabolic demand. And I'll do my best to explain. When we're nasal breathing, it's affecting our our level of carbon dioxide in our bloodstream. So to just sit here calmly, hand on your tummy, breathing in and out through your nose, for most people, not a problem.
Mhm.
But as soon as we start using our muscles, as soon
Mm.
as we start doing stuff, it creates more CO2 in our bloodstream. That's where that breathlessness comes from. Your CO2 levels get high. It sends a signal to your brain to breathe. It's not because you're running out of air. It's not because you're gassed. It's because you have low tolerance to CO2. How do we get rid of that CO2? You push the air out. That pushes the CO2 out so that you can start to get back to nasal breathing again.
Mhm.
So it could have been maybe, possibly, maybe a well-meaning person 100 years ago figured out that you have to blow out CO2 in order to bring yourself back to nasal breathing. Maybe.
Mhm.
And then just somehow over the years of, you know, not saying things correctly, like that game telephone, it just became a thing. Now, I will say also that it's not evil to breathe out through your mouth. So no one's going to get in trouble by the breathing police. If if breathing through your mouth is part of something, at least make sure try to inhale through your nose,
Mhm.
exhale through your mouth, because as you inhale through your nose, you're cleaning the air. You're bringing in what's called nasal nitric oxide. You're It's actually better for you to inhale. I try to sense, I'm trying to edit myself because we can talk about this for like 6 hours. It's better. It's better.
Yeah.
Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth
Mhm.
is better for you than inhale and exhale through your
Mhm.
mouth.
Mhm.
Inhale through your nose, exhale through your nose is better than all three options, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm going to paint you a picture now and the listeners. I think I have a funny picture about this on my Instagram somewhere. But seriously, I you should see me how I go to bed at night. I am so glad my husband loves me and he does not care how I look like when I go to bed because so starting from the top, my hair is up and I have a sleep mask, then nose tape, then I have this huge thick concoction in my mouth. I used to have aligners and mouth guards and all of that. Now I have the sleep apnea thing that pushes my jaw forward and it has these hinges and those blue things kind of look out of the corner of my mouth because they don't fit. Then I have mouth tape on top of that. Okay. It looks ridiculous. I have tape everywhere, kind of,
Uh-huh.
And I always tell him, I have it in my hand and I go, okay, I love you. Is there anything you need to tell me that we need to discuss right now? Because once this is on, I am not taking it back off. It's too expensive. And of course, I put it on and 2 minutes later he goes, so how was your day, honey?
Uh-huh.
But I put it on my kids. I put mouth tape on my kids because they are mouth breathers. And because of that, they got nasal issues. And actually, they got tartar buildup in
Uh-huh.
their mouth because of
Yes,
mouth breathing.
that is correct. And back to the image of you all taped up. I'll tag you on a Facebook post later today. You'll see I,
Thanks.
I posted this on Facebook a while ago. Same thing. I use earplugs and I got away from the nasal strip because it was
Mm-hmm,
just tearing up my nose.
mm-hmm,
I'm not telling you or telling anyone to do this. I'll tell you what I do now instead is I use a non-addictive nasal spray
mm-hmm,
to help open up my passages. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's just that it's not going to tear up your
mm-hmm.
nose. And the same thing, and just medical tape, just simple micropore
Yeah.
paper tape. So it sounds like you're using, is that a mewing device that you have between your teeth?
It is supposed to be a sleep apnea mouth guard. It's pretty new because and I don't even have traditional sleep apnea because I don't snore.
Uh-huh.
I have these micro sleep apnea events happening throughout the night, but they only happen in REM or deep sleep,
Uh-huh.
which trained my body to not go in REM or deep sleep, especially deep sleep. I have like 1% of deep sleep a night. It's
Uh-huh.
ridiculous, like 2 minutes sometimes, because my body is learned that when we do that, we stop breathing and that's dangerous. So we're not going to do that anymore. And it's
Uh-huh.
going to take apparently a long time for my body to regain that trust and essentially trust itself that now that thing is in my mouth and I don't do that anymore. It's a weird, it's a double, like it looks like an upper and lower mouth guard, but it is connected on a joint. So my jaw cannot go backwards at all.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that gives you an underbite. Yeah, understood. Now, one thing we should probably mention to your audience is if they're going to try taping their mouth, I would recommend try it first when you're awake and absolutely safe. Like tape your mouth shut when you watch a movie or something. If you take naps or if you're able to take a naps, like 5 to 10 minute naps, maybe test it when you're napping because some folks, they cannot tolerate it. They feel like they're
Hmm.
being suffocated and it's not pleasant. So
Yeah.
we want to avoid that. So go step by step, see if you can build a tolerance to it first, and then maybe try it when you're sleeping all night, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I purchased a brand that is especially for men with beards for my husband. And there was a warning on the back that said, if you have diagnosed sleep apnea and you snore very loudly and you stop breathing and all these things, do not use this. Please consult your healthcare provider first, right?
Uh-huh.
So what we do with my husband, if he has a real the machine and everything.
Uh-huh.
If he does have his machine, he is allowed to have the mouth tape on from the doctor cleared. They
Uh-huh.
even wanted to give him one of those. It looks like a headband, so he
Uh-huh.
cannot open his mouth anymore.
Understood.
Um, but if he doesn't wear his sleep apnea machine, he cannot put mouth tape on. So
Uh-huh.
there's safety precautions for sure.
It could be the very, very, very strong mouth tape like that, maybe. That's why I use the medical tape because as gross as it sounds, if enough saliva builds up around it, it'll actually start to peel off.
Hmm.
So I may wake up in the morning with medical tape on
Yep.
my forehead or
Yep.
something like that. But
Hmm.
then but I can still ventilate if I need to ventilate and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So that's
You're
why I
not
opt for,
You're not alone on that. I've had my nose strip over here and my
yeah,
mouth tape over there, or I find it in the bed somewhere because
yeah,
I can't find it. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Okay. So just maybe that's a little TMI for your audience, but yeah.
There's, oh no, we've had way worse.
Okay. amazing.
Ah. Yeah. So, what I have been told probably a couple of years ago is when you are in an acute situation, let's say you have an anxiety attack.
Mhm.
Um, and I learned this from someone who has severe fear of flying, that they breathe in through their nose, but then they try to blow almost like through a straw. And that immediately transitions to the vagus nerve and calms everything down. But again, it's the mouth, right?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of that?
I've not heard of that specifically for stimulating the vagus nerve. I've heard of that to use for OCPD, like if you have to keep the airwaves open,
Hmm.
pursed lip breathing, and also it can be a form of recovery. So, like if you've run around the block, you got to catch your breath. You try. We would have to defer to Google on that one. It may or may not stimulate vagus nerve. Can't comment and I can't comment on it because I don't know. I can't pull something out of my index of stuff to validate that claim.
Which is fine because you have a huge index.
It gets a little rusty sometimes, but I could see how it could get you to focus.
Hmm.
I don't know that it has a direct effect on the vagus nerve, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did it help your friend?
It did.
Okay.
It did. Yep. It absolutely did. And I think when we talk about, because there's so many different breathing exercises,
Uh-huh.
there's box breathing, and even box breathing can look 15 different ways.
Uh-huh.
I've heard it 15 different ways explained. There's this, then there's this really harsh with a sigh out, and these breathing with different
Uh-huh.
nose and the whatever. To me, when I do breathing exercises, it depends on what situation I am and what I can start with. For example, I could never in an anxious situation start with box breathing
Uh-huh.
because I don't want to hold my breath
Correct.
in that moment. So I have to start with something different that eases me in. Sometimes I do the blowing through the straw thing just to get calm enough where then I can switch to the box breathing because then I feel safe enough to hold my breath.
Yeah, correct. And actually, you hit on something that's really, really important. Breath holding in particular can absolutely 100% totally trigger an anxiety response. So, so just a couple of things. Number one, we'll go backwards a little bit. Which type of breath work for what, and which breath work is right, and how do you choose between the different breath work, etc. So, number one, it should be what's the goal?
Yeah.
Once you establish the goal, then you can understand maybe which breath work to try. And then two might be might be can I tolerate that kind of breath work?
Mhm.
So maybe your goal is to be a, a free diver who can hold their breath for 4 minutes underwater. But you see, you're holding your breath underwater. So you have to
Yeah.
look at the second goal. Is it something I can tolerate? If you can't tolerate holding your breath, it's unlikely you can work on being a free diver, right? So you have to figure out what the goal is. So if your goal is to bring yourself down, become more grounded, and I'm just repeating what you were saying.
Hmm.
You have to find the correct breath work for that.
Hmm.
And it probably will not include breath holding. It will probably not be something really uh, extreme. It'll probably be something very calming and soothing to get you to that parasympathetic state. And then maybe from there, you can go on to some other technique depending on your goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I have no, and I wonder if you have noticed that when you box breathe with other people, and I'm saying this because At my previous job, it was Zoom meetings all day. And a lot of times I would do some type of breath exercise to get everybody in the space and out of that stress and, well, into a new stress. But, we could take
Uh-huh.
like 2 minutes to switch. And when people knew what box breathing was, and they knew that there is a breath holding coming up any second, it would be like this.
Yeah,
And they would pull their shoulders up. And it's like,
correct.
no, not like that. It would be totally up here, not on the belly,
Correct.
because they're so worried they won't have enough breath and oxygen in their body to hold on to. I was like, well, that's defeating the purpose.
Correct. Well, as you demonstrated, that breath, it goes right
Hmm.
into the clavicles, and that's something that I see a lot with yoga people. Like if I'm teaching somewhere, a workshop or a class at a live event or something, and if these are, I don't know how to explain it, people who are practicing conventional forms of yoga.
Hmm.
So I know you mentioned it earlier. See, functional yoga instruction isn't conventional yoga. It's like in its own little silo over here.
Yeah.
It's under the yoga umbrella, but it's not conventional yoga. I'll try to use those words. But if I go to these classes or these workshops, and I'll say, well, let's take a breath in, inevitably the whole room goes something like that. And it's actually like a very, very, very shallow and stressful breath. When you take a deep breath, it should be long, silent, and deep, as in deep past your lungs. It doesn't make sense anatomically, but try to think of breathing in your bladder, if you can
Yep.
imagine. So
Yep.
you're trying to breathe into your pelvis, and sort of like a thermometer, it just fills up from there. That's a deep breath.
Mhm.
Not pulling your shoulders to your ears and your clavicle to your chin. That's a very, very, very shallow breath. You're only getting the upper lobes of the lungs. And I guess I should also say, or I guess make it clear, by breathing lower into your lobes, deeper into your lobes of your lungs, I beg your pardon, you get a better exchange of oxygen into your bloodstream.
Mhm.
And so there are reasons why you're trying to breathe lower, slower, and deeper.
Yeah.
Oxygenation is one. That's where you get your energy. And as far as running out of air, um, most of us are not going to run out of air. It's just
Mhm.
that we can't tolerate the breath hold because the CO2 levels, we're not used to CO2. And the CO2 is triggering your brain. You have to breathe. If any of us have a spleen, that organ, that mystery organ just under our left lung somewhere, the spleen has a reserve of red blood cells in it where we
Mhm.
can actually last, depending on the size of the spleen, somewhere in the realm of 2 to 3 minutes without air. The spleen will just start pushing red blood cells into the bloodstream. So you're not really running out of air just from holding your breath for 15 seconds or 30 seconds. You're not running out of air. You just can't tolerate the CO2 that's building up in your bloodstream.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The spleen is a very undervalued organ.
What's it there for? Well, one of its functions is pushing red blood cells into the bloodstream.
Hmm. That's amazing. You touched too on yoga practice, and we just had it this morning in our yoga practice together. How when you have to really engage your core and everything is tight, right? That shield of muscles is just working. Do you have tips on when active people, and even if you weightlift or whatever you do, but once your core is activated, still breathe into this? Because
Hmm.
for me, that always seems hard because there's less space.
Hmm. It's a weird technique. It's something Pavel Satsulin wrote about long, long, long time ago. Pavel Satsulin is a strength coach from Russia. He's written a ton of books. He has revolutionized the fitness industry. If you've ever seen or used a kettlebell, in North America, that's because of Pavel Tsatsouline. He came up with what was called the Russian Kettlebell Challenge somewhere that around 2000 or 2001.
Yeah.
So now kettlebells are ubiquitous, and that's all thanks to John Duquesne and Pavel Tsatsouline. But before that, he had written a book called Power to the People, and I believe a book called the Naked Warrior. And what he talked about, the technique, was breathing behind the shield. And it's the way that martial artists and boxers breathe. I'll do my best to explain. If you're boxing, if you can imagine boxing, if you get hit in the breadbasket when you're loose in your core or in between a breath, it's lights out. You'll just collapse in a heap on the mat, and you have lost that round. You've lost the match. So you have to learn how to breathe behind the shield. Now, unfortunately, for the people who are not watching this, I don't know how clear it will be. I'm going to use my hands as a demonstration.
Okay.
So this is my right hand. And if my right hand is kind of demonstrating how your guts will move when you breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So you breathe in and your guts move forward away from your spine. You breathe out and your guts move towards your spine. Now, if you're kind of loose in your tummy, that's like a bellows breath in yoga. Now, breathing behind the shield is when, now my left hand will represent maybe like your transversus abdominis, probably transversus abdominis, maybe a little bit of what is the other one? Rectus abdominis. You contract your core,
Mm-hmm.
but you wind up breathing against your contracted muscles. So you're breathing against the shield. So if you can imagine lying on your tummy, if you're lying on your tummy, breathing in and out through your nose, your tummy's going to press into the floor. It's not going to be able to go far because you're pressing into the floor. Your tummy will stop. So if you stand up and brace your abs, now your abs become the floor and you're breathing against that. In a way, in a weird way, it's like you're inhaling the whole time while you're inhaling and exhaling to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of play around with it to experience it, but that's what we're trying to do. You're trying to breathe behind the shield. Now it also depends on, like maximum effort and stuff like that. I'm sure power lifters have very, very specific techniques where they use what's called the Valsalva sink maneuver. It's a big grunt. They take in all the air they possibly can and they grunt and lift a car off the ground or something like that. We don't need to do that. When we're just, even if you're doing a push-up or a pull-up, we don't need to grunt because we're not doing maximal lifts. We're doing
Mm-hmm.
sub-maximal lift. So if you find yourself grunting, like you're, whatever you're doing biceps curls and you go, and you're pausing, bringing those biceps curls up, stop immediately because the stress that you're putting on your nervous system and your entire system in general, the stress is not counteracting the benefit. You're getting a lot of stress, but very low benefit. So you want to find the breath where you can still breathe in and out through your nose. You'll contract your muscles without sounding like you're trying to lift a 350-pound Atlas stone. Does that make
Okay, so
sense?
that does make sense. And now everybody who goes to the gym who has these grunters in the gym is allowed to walk up and say, hey, this is actually not good for you.
Well, and the other thing is too, you didn't ask, but I'll throw this in.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure, especially for your pelvic floor, and your rectum, don't push down on those things. Like if you're grunting to do a push up or you're grunting to lift a weight, don't push down. Pull those things up.
Mm-hmm.
Pull your pelvic floor up into your body and pull your rectum up into your body. It creates pelvic stability as well as low back stability. And there's research, there's papers on that as well. Don't push that stuff out. Pull it in, pull it in.
Yeah. 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 It's so important. And from someone who has back issues, I I vouch for that. Um, you will only do that once.
Well, if you can control it. I mean, I'm sure there are going to be there's always anomalies, right?
Hmm.
There are anomalies in math and science and nature. But the thing is to not make a habit out of it. Like, make sure make the habit as correct and as um, safe and as usable as possible.
Hmm. Hmm. What do you suggest for people who are starting out with breathing? So let's just say they just start out with being even aware of their breathing, and they
Hmm.
maybe have some, overstimulation, anxiety, kind of overwhelm every once in a while. What they should do in the moment, but maybe also as more of a practice.
Hmm. Well, first things first, if they haven't yet, see someone who's qualified to talk about this stuff. Make sure that it's not some sort of chemical imbalance in the brain or something. Make sure that everything's okay, and just make sure you're getting the right treatment for the right things. Now, I'm not really qualified to prescribe anything, but I can share with you what papers suggest and what the research suggests,
Hmm.
and even what's common amongst different practitioners. Uh, what I'm what my index brings me to is Dr. Richard Brown. And Dr. Richard Brown, I believe he's spotlighted in James Nestor's book.
Hmm.
He talks about coherent breathing. And what Dr. Richard Brown will do, if I understand correctly, when he receives a new patient, it doesn't matter anything about their background, anything at all. He has them sit down and he has them breathe 5 seconds in through the nose, 5 seconds out through the nose. About 5 seconds in, about 5 seconds out. Because this is what brings you into a state of coherence. So I'll try to talk a little bit about that. Now, it might be a little different these days, but when I was younger, we had this thing called Blockbuster. And it
Yep.
was a store where you would
Yep.
go and you would try to pick a movie to watch for the evening or for the week. And it's a great example of how how the hemispheres of the brain work against each other.
Hmm.
Because one hemisphere wants this type of movie, the other hemisphere wants that type of movie, and there's this crosstalk, and you can't decide if it's going to be action, adventure, documentary because there's no coherence.
Hmm.
The logic side's doing the logic side, the emotional side's doing the emotional side. But when we slow the breath down and you're breathing 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, in and out through the tummy, the hemispheres of the brain, for lack of a better word, they start to cooperate. And this is the side effect of meditation as well. That's what makes meditation so effective, is now you're just focused on one thing, whether it's your breath, whether it's a mantra, whether you're staring at a candle, but your brain starts to cooperate, for lack of a better word.
Hmm.
And so you get that coherence and it just brings everything down and you're just here in the moment. You can't worry about the future because you're focused on 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. You can't regret the past because you're here 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. You don't have the desire to run out of the office because you're here 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
Hmm.
So that may be a good place for most people to start. If they become ungrounded or anxious, or they start to get those fight or flight feelings,
Hmm.
that may be a good place to start. And it's funny because it's sort of a trope in stories, movies, television. What happens when one of the friends in the group starts to freak out, what does everyone say?
Breathe.
Breathe, right?
Yeah.
They say, calm down, breathe, breathe. So there is some legit- legitimacy to that. But how do we breathe? Like how? What exactly does that mean? It could mean 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, in and out through the tummy, keep the chest still.
Mhm. This is, I
Does
mean,
that answer the question?
it does, and
Okay.
it's so interesting how we are, lizard brain still works, and we're still inclined to do that because this is why we sigh. This is why we go, "Ugh," or what did you just say? And we take a deep
Mhm.
breath, but obviously we're doing it wrong. But there is that need for either breathing out or breathing in is always there somehow. So that's really interesting. And I'm doing a meditation recently that does hemi sync, it's called, where you have to use very old fashioned headphones, cannot be
Okay.
noise canceling or anything. And they do the brainwave thing. They try to sync those together and bring them in harmony, and it's quite good. So that's fantastic to know that breathing alone can
Mhm.
also get you there. That's huge.
Yeah, this is what the yogis, however many thousands of years ago, were trying to figure out all those years ago. Even like preceding the postures was always about the breath work because they were trying to make themselves immortal. And although they had, they didn't, of course, they didn't have science, they didn't have things to write down, but they would just experiment with the different breathing techniques to see what effects were elicited. And then they would just try to pass that down
Mhm.
from person to person through generation and generation. So this stuff has been around for a long time. And it's only now kind of, I guess, what does now mean? It's only been semi recently that Western science is starting to catch up with what all the ancient yoga people knew thousands of years ago.
Mhm.
It's just here, just right here, right, literally like right under your nose. You can make yourself happy, sad, sleepy, angry. I don't know if you can make yourself dopey, but so you just go through
Probably.
all the dwarfs, and you can acquire 6 out of 7, or maybe 5 out of 7, because you can't make yourself doc either. But hopefully, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Just by changing the way you breathe, you change your state. The yogis knew about that thousands of years ago. Science is starting to catch up with it and understand it now.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that we did thousands of years ago that we forgot, and I even I think Nestor talks about that too, that all these indigenous tribes around the world have this habit of when they have a baby, a newborn baby, they watch them sleep, and if they sleep with their mouth open, they hold their mouth shut
Hmm.
for a
Yeah,
while.
it's like if you shush someone,
Hmm.
you just
Yeah,
hold the lips together while they're
yeah,
sleeping.
because they knew how
Hmm.
important that was. Um, This is amazing. And I think just knowing sometimes with our brain how that works, right? Just knowing that is what it does, it will serve you a lot better because you have that awareness of what
Hmm.
is happening in your body. And that's, I think, already a huge advantage for people to know.
I think it was Mel Robbins. I think, again, full disclosure, your listeners, your audience, you are free to absolutely correct me. I'm open to being corrected. It's fine. I'm not proclaiming to be an expert in all these things, but I believe it was Mel Robbins who said, you can think of stress as like a switch, and you can control that switch. Stress just isn't something that happens to you. You are flipping a switch on or off. So, if you're my stressor is traffic,
Mm-hmm.
driving, driving in traffic, and no one's going fast enough, or someone just cut me off. That's my trigger. But it's not that someone cut me off. It's that I flipped that switch to go into fight or flight. That's me. So I have control over that and I can flip that switch back to rest and digest.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We have control. We do. It's probably on a spectrum. Someone probably has absolute control, and then someone on the other end probably has maybe less control, but you can train yourself. You can meet in the middle and train yourself. You realize, oh, I'm freaking out, or whatever the words you use are. Flip that switch, get you out of stress.
Yeah. It's the old saying of you're in control on how you respond to things, right?
Right. What's happening is merely what's happening. It's how you respond that makes the difference. So someone cut me off in traffic. That's all that happened. The
Yeah.
world's still spinning.
Mhm.
It's, like whatever else, like nothing stopped. It's not going to be on the news. I'm not going to think about it in an hour. So that's just something that happened. How do I respond to that? Do I flip the switch to rest and digest, or do I flip the switch to fight or flight? That's
Yeah.
up to me.
Yeah. That's amazing. What are some other daily routines that you do that you can recommend for that would work probably for most people, with all of those things that, I know you do yoga, you do qigong. I don't know if you still do tai chi, you do breathing exercises, meditation. What's like the good recipe maybe for someone who easily gets like overwhelmed and maybe has to be in a situation every day that's kind of overwhelmed?
hmm Now, again, I'm not an expert in this realm, but I can discuss what's in papers, what's in research, like
Mm.
what's proven, what are proven techniques. And it probably will not surprise you. I mean, it's exactly what you think is grounding type exercises, things that get both hemispheres of the brain to cooperate. And although it will sound like a shameless plug, and I apologize if it sounds like a shameless plug, but a method of yoga, yeah. But I can only speak from experience and based on what my clients share with me. So, the umbrella term, the umbrella message out there is, like yoga is good for this and yoga is good for that and do yoga to improve this. The problem is these days, there are probably 6 billion types of yoga. So how do you know which type of yoga is going to help you with what? I don't know that goat yoga is going to help ground you. Maybe the idea of a small barn animal defecating and urinating on you is going to send your anxiety through the roof. I don't know.
Mhm.
So I can't say go do goat yoga. I don't know that hyperventilating while flexing, extending your spine and chanting is going to help. It might make your symptoms worse because you're not grounded. You're going off into la la land. Now, I'm not saying these are wrong or bad or
Mhm.
evil. It goes back to earlier into the discussion. What is the goal? So if your goal is to become grounded, we need to focus. And that's what redefined yoga or my method of yoga, functional yoga instruction, that's what it does because we go through step by step, pose by pose, step by step, and your attention is brought into your entire body. We focus on the feet, work your way up to your shoulders. And as we're practicing, you're constantly reminded where are your feet, where's your core, where are your shoulders, things of that nature. And that's the constant, that inner focus, that inner gaze, that proprioception, all of which there are papers about. Heightened proprioception, heightened awareness of where you are right now in time and space. That's the thing that can keep you from becoming anxious and depressed and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Not necessarily a choreographed aerobics class under the guise of yoga.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you want to speak to it a little bit because you've tried functional yoga a couple times.
Well, and I have tried other yogas as well. And exactly what you said. First of all, I always got injured.
Mm.
Best example, the most extreme example I actually have was a beginner's class. Okay. Beginner crow's pose
Mm.
in a beginner's class.
Mhm.
I looked at that lady and said, seriously? If you don't know what crow's pose is, you need to Google it. I mean, you're
Mhm.
essentially having your entire weight on your hands and on your arms. And that, anyway, almost dislocated my shoulder. Then I pulled a hamstring,
Mm.
whatever,
Oh my gosh.
When
Oh,
I came
no.
when I came to your approach to yoga, it was, and it's still today like this, the focus on the breathing with the movement. So first we learn the movement, right? Then we do the movement correct. We correct everything. And now we're going to try to add the breath into the movement and the correct rhythm if we can. So there's always a step-by-step direction until you have it. And now I notice when we do, for example, when we do qigong, that immediately with the movement, my breath is automatically falling in that place of that movement because it is so used to it now. And that's just, it's amazing. And it has an amazing effect on me. And like what you said, I feel so grounded and balanced when we're done. And something that I didn't know that you explained in one of the classes too is you get the wiggles if you're not balanced. Then
Mhm.
you're trying to wiggle around. And now I'm doing this with my children. I was like, okay, let's balance you out, do left side, right side, and then we bring it together. And the wiggles are gone. Oops,
Amazing.
magic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And there's one thing, well, first, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that. But I also wanted to bring attention to words that you said, if you can. That's a big chunk of the redefined method. If you can. If you go to a conventional yoga class, most times, most classes, you're just expected to inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down, inhale, chest up, exhale, jump back, inhale, and you're just expected to do that.
Hmm.
Now, how do you think an absolute beginner feels? They're nervous enough, maybe trying yoga for the first time. They're looking around. Maybe they know a couple people, maybe they don't. And now they're just being told, inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down, inhale this, inhale that.
Hmm.
Do you think they're getting more and more overwhelmed and feeling judged because they can't do it right? So is their anxiety going up or is their anxiety going down?
Yep.
Right? That's what separates redefined yoga from that. Just those three words that you said. And I'm really glad you said that. If you can. And you'll hear me say it 100 times. You'll hear my beautiful wife say it 100 times. Teresa, she does her classes from Hawaii. She'll say it 100 times. If you can, because we have to go step by step. And then once you start to feel more comfortable, you start to feel more grounded, then you start to integrate the next phase of the practice, whatever that is for you. So that was
Hmm.
very good. I'm glad you said that.
Hmm. To me, it's always a reminder when you say, if you can, it reminds me, oh, Melina, we're leaving the ego at the door, okay? We are not
Correct.
proving anything here.
Correct.
Because again, this morning, lifting your head off toning you the front of your neck. Nope, not doing that. And then I just imagine to get my head off. And sometimes it's just, and I'm probably the youngest in the class right now, but that doesn't matter. I have neck issues, so I can't do that. So I have to work my way up to that. And I think you have no pressure in your classes. It is not overwhelming. It is at a pace that everybody can follow. Um, and you record everything too. I love that because I can go back to it and say, I need to do that again.
Got to do
you
this one
know.
again.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're mentioning all this because that's what I came up through. When I was working my way up through the yoga ranks, I would make mental notes just as a student. Like believe me, I had no idea of even teaching yoga, but I would make little notes as a student And I would say things in my brain like, I'll never do that. If I ever teach, I'll never do that. If I ever teach, I'll never do that. Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember just me, um, not, not to be braggadocious, but I'm pretty mobile. I'm pretty limber. So you can imagine 20 years ago, I was like pretty limber. And, without any warning, a yoga teacher would come up behind me and just adjust me a little bit. He would grab me. This was very popular, like in the 1990s. Adjustments were all the rage, and teachers would just grab you and pull your arm into position. You can look it up sometime.
Mm-hmm.
God, don't look it up, but you'll see images of teachers standing on students' legs, forcing them into splits, and you'll see teachers standing on students' backs, forcing them into forward bends and things of that nature. Now, I never had anything that extreme, but without warning, someone would come up behind me and give me an adjustment. I didn't ask for an adjustment. I wasn't warned.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember in my brain, I will never do this to a student ever, never, ever. And if I ever felt lost in class, there was a class I took. They called everything out in Sanskrit. And for your audience, for your viewers, they may or may not know, but yoga, it's common
Mm-hmm.
to use Sanskrit terms. Earlier, Melina said crow pose. So she got it easy. Most of the time they'll say things like Bakasana or Vrikshasana, Adho Mukha Shavasana. There's another one. It's like Astapadmasana. Like there's these ridiculous names that no one knows. And I remember taking this class and they called it all out in Sanskrit. And I remember I will never do that again. I will never do that to my students
Mm-hmm.
because you want your students to be engaged and feel like they're part of something. You don't want to alienate them and make them wonder like, maybe I need to learn an a language that's been dead for 3,000 years and no one really knows what it sounds like. So no, just
Yeah.
call it triangle. We're going
Yeah.
to do triangle pose. Here's how we do it.
Yeah. I have enough issues remembering all the different warriors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah,
which one is that again?
exactly. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, highly recommend yoga with you, redefined yoga with functional yoga, because I don't know if anyone teaches functional yoga. I don't think so. And you're on demand, so people can log in from all over the world. Doesn't matter where you are. You can do it from South Africa. Love your qigong classes. Those are my favorite because I feel like I need them at least.
Mhm.
I do them once a week, even if we have a week where we don't have it. I will watch it on repeat because it's again, it's that balance and grounding for me that I need. And I also really like the idea of playing with my own energy ball.
That's
It's
fine.
my
Yeah.
favorite thing to do.
Love it.
Um, all the breathing exercises too, what you just mentioned. I am so aware now how many times a day I hold my breath or I breathe really
Mm,
shallow. And it directly affects my mood, my anxiety, my ADHD traits that I have get a lot worse if I don't watch my breathing.
yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it's what's happening inside. You're sending signals to your nervous system and it's going to respond.
Yeah. And I really liked what you said about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, because that is the simplest thing on this earth. It's not like fancy, oh, you need to do this way, or you need to do, or you need to do box breathing or whatever. No, just breathe.
Hmm. Well, you had asked earlier, and I probably derailed a little bit. You asked like what to do, like what should someone who's listening or watching right now, like what should their protocol be? And I kind of went off the rails a little bit, and I'll do my best to explain. And I'm just going to echo what you said. Keep it simple.
Mhm.
No matter what you do, you don't need a bunch of gadgets and gizmos and stuff. You really don't. You need to figure out what your goal is. What's your goal? And then what's the simplest way to achieve that goal? What's the safest way to achieve that goal? And then if something is equally safe, then what's the less time consuming way?
Mhm.
Those are the principles. And once you understand those principles, then you can find the method that works for you. Shameless plug, Redefined Yoga ticks all those boxes, but
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want your viewers and your audience 100% to be absolutely free to choose whatever they want. And that's just my recommendation. Figure out your goal, find what works, keep it simple, and make sure that you're progressing. Have fun with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian, for being on the show. This was
You're very welcome.
fabulous. And like you said, we could make this a 6-hour show just talking about breathing. And I'm pretty sure that we discussed so many points that listeners can easily put into their day, apply this, just awareness for now. Just maybe checking with themselves. How am I breathing in those situations?
100%.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. And thank you. And thank your listeners. I look forward to being corrected in the comments. I'm happy to receive actionable and specific feedback. And I'm easy to reach. So if your audience has questions, comments, or concerns, just reach out to me. I'm a human, flesh and blood. I respond to those emails and the texts and whatnot. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to hear from you. And
Yeah.
thanks again,
I'm
Melinda.
putting everything in the show notes so everybody can see where you are and find you. And well, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. See you next week. Thanks,
You bet.
Brian. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed. You can give it a thumbs up. You can give it a review. You can share it with somebody you think might resonate with this. Have a great day. See you next time.